Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder as I head out for a walk and deliver an episode to you while I stroll around. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good morning, listeners. It is a blustery, chilly November day here in suburban Chicago. The weather has certainly turned a corner and it is in the mid-30s Fahrenheit, but has a chill to it that is something special, by which I mean really cold. Nonetheless, I go out for a walk on your behalf to let you know what's going down. For those of you in the United States, I hope you had an enjoyable Thanksgiving weekend. We did around my place. We did not go anywhere in deference to the plague, but we did enjoy a sumptuous and perhaps gluttonous meal and good conversation with the people who live in our house and Zooms with the family and so on. Overall, it was a nice weekend, even if we didn't get to see family that we usually travel to see. On the upside, I didn't have an 8-hour drive home on Sunday, which was a nice change, although it would be worth it. Nonetheless, it's also nearly the end of November, so we're moving toward December and toward the end of the season. We've got fewer than 20 episodes left on this season of Pick Up and Deliver. If you have topic ideas or things you'd like to hear me talk about before I take my midwinter break, now's the time to submit them. We've got about 3 weeks left, and looking forward to presenting those episodes for you. Actually, we have like 5 weeks left, I think. Today's episode is a pretty standard fare. Today we're going to be shooting from the hip, triple shot. I know none of you are new to the podcast, but nonetheless, Shootin' from the Hip is a feature of the show in which I give a brief discussion of a game I've tried recently. It could best be thought of as a first impressions rather than a review, usually because I've only played the game once or twice, and so I'm not really in the place to give it enough discussion to really get a sense of the result of the game. If you look on my podcast feed or you look on the podcast show page over at rattleboxgames.com, you will find the more in-depth game discussions called Messages from the Deep. And these are things that will better explain what I'm trying to do or what I understand about games that I've played, 5 to 10 times rather than once or twice. Thus, Shootin' from the Hip, triple shot. Today's games, I will go from least interesting to most interesting, or game I like least to game I like best, build up the suspense a little bit, which means I will start with our discussion of Visitor in Blackwood Grove. Visitor in Blackwood Grove is a game that got a lot of press when it came out in 2017. I remember at least 4 different podcasts doing discussions of it on some level. It is a very light game without too much going on, but nonetheless an interesting experience. The premise is basically a scene out of E.T., the extraterrestrial, the movie about the wholesome, wrinkly alien who shows up in Earth and has to become friends, or is befriended by a child whose family has been torn apart by divorce, the famous Steven Spielberg movie. In Visitor in Blackwood Grove, an alien ship has crashed and the alien needs help. There are 2 groups of people trying to help the alien. There is the child, or the kid, and then there are the agents. So the game is played at a minimum of 3 players, up to 7, I believe. One person is always the visitor, one person is the kid, and at least one person is an agent, but each person is an agent for a different organization. So there's a CIA agent, an FBI agent, a NSA agent, a Interpol, etc., etc. The idea of the game is that there's a force field around the visitor's ship, and in order to communicate, objects pass through the force field. Some objects are allowed through, some are not, based on a sort of arbitrary rule decided by the alien. Now, if you haven't played before, or you don't want the challenge of deciding a rule, there are 24 rule cards that give you different sample rules you might use. So in our first game, we just drew one of those. The kid and the alien are trying to work together to let the kid prove the rule. So whatever the rule is, the rule might be like the example they give in the rule book is things that contain metal. Then you have this giant deck of cards which have pictures of things on them, stuff like a pencil, an automobile, a bird, etc. And the alien at the beginning takes 2 of these cards and places them either inside the force field or outside the force field as a way to show what can pass through and what cannot. Thereafter, the players take turns guessing, taking cards out of their hand and guessing whether they will go inside or outside. Oh, okay, let me see. The kid has to guess whether they'll go inside or outside, and with their right, they gain trust with the alien, which is necessary for them to win. The agents, they don't get to guess. They just give the alien a card and the alien classifies it for them, either inside or outside, as though they're trying the field, but they don't build any trust. As the game goes along, there are either the kid or one of the agents has to prove the rule in order to win. If the alien runs out of cards, the humans win, or the agents win. If the deck runs out of cards, the kid and the alien win. If the kid proves the rule, the kid wins, and if one of the agents prove the rule, that agent wins, but the other ones don't. It is a cute little deduction game that takes about 10 minutes to play. It probably takes as long to explain as it does to play. It was fine. I certainly could see it being enjoyable as a game you play, best of 3, or you play first person to win twice or something. Take turns being, or maybe each person takes turns being the alien once and play half a dozen games or something. That would be a half an hour or 45 minutes. The coming up with a rule would be an interesting activity to do. Although, like I said, we did not do that. Instead, we just, we did not come up with a rule ourselves. Instead, I just used one out of the deck of cards, and that is a thing you could do. It's a fine filler if you have a chance to play it at a game club or something once the terrible times are over. That would be fine. But in general, I would say, fine to take a chance. You don't need to put a lot of effort into seeking it out. I found it for $8 at Half Price Books and was happy to get it for that. So that's Visitor in Blackwood Grove. The next game I want to talk about is Railroad Ink. Blazing Red Edition. There are 2 editions of Railroad Ink available in the United States, the Blazing Red and the something deep blue, I think. There's also a green edition and a yellow edition, which I know have been released in Europe. I don't think they've made it to US yet, although I could be wrong. Railroad Ink is a roll and write in the literal sense. You have whiteboards and dice, and you roll the dice, and then you draw symbols on the whiteboards. You are drawing railroads and highways, and your goal is to connect the railroads and highways together into a network, and the scoring is a relatively simple act of the number of entrances to a network is a multiplier for points. So the more entrances in a single network, the more points you get. You get a couple rule breakers that you get to use once per game, and that's kind of it. You're rolling the dice and drawing the shapes on your board. Like I said, you get a couple of rule breakers. The Blazing Red Edition also comes with 4 other dice that encompass 2 separate modules you can add to the game, which add slightly different rules. The Blazing Red ones add a volcano or asteroid crashing, or both, I guess, if you wanted to use both. Although, frankly, I haven't read the rules for that part yet. So this is truly a shooting from the hip because I haven't even tried the advanced game yet. But my first instinct is that it's a really interesting path drawing roll and write game. I really like the path drawing roll and writes. This is a thing I've enjoyed in a variety of these games. I really like Avenue of the Kodama. I really like Trails of Tucana. And then there's this one. All 3 I've enjoyed quite a bit. The drawing of a route is a slightly different experience than some of the other roll and writes that have you, say, drawing a shape in a grid or marking off boxes or filling in numbers or that sort of. All in all, it's a fine game. Not a ton going on, at least in the base game, but fun nonetheless. That's Railroad Ink Blazing Red Edition. I'm happy to play it. I will say my wife did not like it very much. Turns out she doesn't really like the trail drawing or path drawing games. Those are not her favorite of the roll and write genre. which is a bummer to me because I did pre-order Trails of Tucana a while ago, and the fact that it's coming now is it's a little bummer because I know she won't like it. I really did like that one, and she might because it's got a jungle theme and it is slightly different, but we'll see. Anyhow, that's Railroad Inc. Oh, as a side story, I don't think I've mentioned this on the podcast yet. I had an amusing encounter. I bought this game used from a fellow Chicago area person who had posted on the Chicago area flea market Facebook group, or Board Game Geek group. And he was selling this game for Railroad Inc. for $13, which felt like a good price to me. Definitely less than retail, and less than it would cost to get and ship generally. So it was a good buy. And he and I were figuring out where to do the exchange, and I suggested some daytime meetups. He couldn't do that because of his work. We were talking about nighttime meetups, and they sort of offhandedly mentioned, unless you're available early in the morning. Well, it just so happens that I was. My daughter, her swim club has these weird hours because they're trying to get kids in swimming and still be COVID safe. So like right now she's swimming one person per lane for an hour occasionally. And so the swim times are very strange. In this case, I was there from 5:30 till 7 in the morning. And so I was going to be sitting in this parking lot kind of near where he lived early in the morning. So when he offhandedly said, in case you're available early in the morning, I said, sure I am. I can meet you then. So we met at 6:30 in the morning in a Barnes & Noble parking lot. It felt like the nerdiest drug deal ever because he just pulled up next to my car. We got out, we exchanged the game in cash, and off we went. So anyway, that was fun. Railroad Inc. Blazing Red Edition. The third game I got to try was a little bit of retail therapy. I felt like buying a game. I went to my game shop. I looked around. I picked up something with my monthly cash. I don't know how your family does sort of fun money, but in my family, each adult gets some monthly cash that is total fun money. We don't have to think about or talk about with the other person what we're spending. It's budgeted as do whatever you want with this money. That's how I tend to pay for the Arkham Horror expansions, and in this case, that's how I was paying for my retail therapy game, Calico. So Calico is a new game from AEG. I forget the name of the designers. I feel bad about that. I'll see if I can add in the designers and the companies at the end of the episode here. But it is a tile-laying, pattern-matching game themed around quilting and cats. So the premise is that you are making a quilt using one of 6 different patterns and 6 different colors, or using a combination of 6 different patterns and colors, and trying to attract cats and build patterns. The gameplay is pretty simple. You have 2 tiles in hand. You have a board where you can put these hex tiles, and then each turn you play one of the hex tiles and then take one of the 3 that are in the current market, and then you draw a new one out of the bag and put that in the market as well. In gameplay, and you score basically 3 different sets of things. There are like 18 cats in the game. 15. There are 15 different cats in the game. And 10? There's 10. There's 5 cat tiles double-sided. So there's 10 different cats in the game. And on any given game, you're going to use 3 of them. And these cats have patterns that they enjoy. And they like either the pattern of color or the pattern pattern ends up getting used twice here. They have 3 different, each cat has an arrangement it enjoys. And it could be an arrangement of quilt pieces of the same color, or it could be quilt pieces of the same pattern. But either way, if you put that into your quilt, the cat likes it, and you get to put that token for that cat on your quilt, which is worth points. The harder the pattern, the more the points are worth. Then you also have a thing where you will score points based on whenever you put 3 quilting pieces of the same color next to each other, you get a button, and the buttons are 3 points each. And if you get all 6 different color buttons, then you get to add a free rainbow button as well. And then finally, you have 3 scoring tiles in your board. For your base game, it suggests everyone using the same 3 scoring tiles, but thereafter you draw 4 of the 6 possible ones and then pick 3 of those to put on your board. And then you're trying to score those scoring tiles. And this part's really interesting. The scoring tiles, it's a hex, so there's 6 spots around the hex that contribute to the score. And it'll be a pattern like A, A, B, B, C, C. What that means is that you have 2 matching tiles, 2 other matching tiles, and a 3rd pair of matching tiles, in the 6 spots around your scoring tile. In those 6, it doesn't matter what order they go in around your scoring tile, as long as you can meet that formula. Now here's the interesting thing. Like I said, there are 6 colors and 6 patterns on the hex tiles, and they're mixed evenly. If you make the formula with color or with pattern, you get 1 score, say 7 points. If you do it with both, so that the 6 tiles have 3 pairs of 2 colors, or 3 pairs of colors, and then the 6 tiles also have 3 pairs of patterns, then you get the higher point value on the scoring tile, which is like, say, 11. So there's this interesting element where you're trying to meet one or both patterns at the same time. And then the way the scoring tiles are laid out, they're close enough together that 1 or 2 of the tiles you're putting down will be in multiple scoring areas. So then you have to think about how the scoring tiles interact with one another. The edge of the board has colors and patterns on it as well, so you also can make the patterns and color matches with the edges of the board. So the game gets really thinky really quickly without ever being complex. This is a very good example of a game that is light or medium complexity, but heavy depth. Like, there is actually quite a bit of depth. I think it's tactile depth, because you can think ahead, but you're not guaranteed that you're going to get all the tiles you want, that they have a limit in how much they're going to show up based on random luck of the draw. You only have 3 tiles to pick from when you draw. That said, Calico is great. If you enjoy Azul or you enjoy Sagrada, for me, Calico scratches that same itch. It feels very similar to those in terms of depth. It's relatively simple, so not too complicated, but pretty deep in terms of what you can do in terms of scoring. It also has a delightful theme. Getting to get the cats is fun. Getting the buttons is nice. Again, sort of not being your standard boring theme. Although, frankly, the last 2 years we've seen such an explosion in interesting themes. I'm not too worried about that anymore. It's also really a puzzle. It's a puzzly abstract game, so the theme is pretty light. I mean, it's helpful there to hang your hat on, but the idea that if you put 4 green tiles in a straight line, this cat will come and lay on your quilt and therefore you get 5 points. It's kind of stupid, but it's really fun. It's an excellent game, and I imagine that 13 months from now, when I'm doing my top 10 games of 2020 or top 5 games of 2020, I cannot imagine that Calico won't be on that list. It's so good. I really enjoy it, and I think it's going to be around for a while. They have this nice thing in the rulebook where they have these achievements that you can earn, which are kind of a nice bonus, allowing you to try to get extra points, or, in the long term, earn some extra quality as well. That might also be a way to balance things out when you have a newer player and an experienced player. One thing I don't see in this game, it is there certainly, but less likely, because there's so much going on your board. In Azul and Sagrada, it's relatively easy to see what's happening in other boards and with a little bit of energy, really put the screws to somebody by taking the thing they need. That's possible in Calico, but it's less likely. Toward the end of the game, you still could have a thing like both, I think we've played 3 times now, 2 or 3 times. And I think in every game I've played, toward the end, I had 1 tile I was looking for, ideally in one combination of color pattern. Like, I really want the purple tile with ivy pattern on it, for example, as opposed to something like Azul, where you can very easily see, if I make them take those 5 red tiles, they're just going to get screwed on points. It's not quite that way in Calico, because there's no penalty points. It's all positive points, but it's still great. So that is Calico from AEG.
The 3 games we discussed today were Visitor in Blackwood Grove, designed by Mary Flanagan and Max Seidman, with art by Maggie Chang and Jack Hagley, published by Resonim Games. Railroad Inc. Blazing Red Edition by Hjalmar Haq, Lorenzo Silva, and artist Marta Tranquilli, published by Horrible Guild. And finally Calico, designed by Kevin Russ, with art by Beth Sobel, and published by Flat Out Games and AEG.
What games have you been playing lately? Have you tried any of the ones I've mentioned? What other games have been new to your table What other games can you shoot from the hip about? Pop over to Board Game Geek Guild 3269 and let me know what games you have coming to the table. You can also reach me, Brendan, at rattleboxgames.com, where I'm happy to chat with you about the show or anything else that comes to mind. Thanks for joining me today. I hope your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.